Welcome to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists. Welcome to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists. This podcast is brought to you by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. We'll be in iTunes soon, and you can subscribe to the podcast by going to our website at bmwmoa.org/podcast. Thanks for joining us. Hello again, everybody, and thanks for coming back for our second episode. We'll get to our interview in a couple of minutes. If you want to find out when we have new episodes, you can just remember that they're coming out every 2 weeks on Monday. So this episode will be released on the 21st of August, and then the next episode will be 2 weeks after that. Or you can head over to the website, which is bmwmoa.org/podcast, and that'll take you right to the web page that has the RSS feed and the and all the episodes, which you can download or listen to right in your web browser. So we're going to get into the news here before the interview portion, and as usual, our partnership with Cycle News is to thank for bringing us up to the date news. Don't forget to check out their website at cyclenews.com and sign up to download their free once a week magazine. They publish 50 weeks out of the year. They do take a break at the end of the year, but we're going to take a break at the end of the year too, so that's not terribly alarming. So one thing that has happened so recently and so quickly that it hasn't made it into Cycle News yet, and something that is kind of shaking up the aftermarket accessories world for adventure bike riders, is that Touratech AG had some financial news that came out last week. It's not bankruptcy. It's they've entered into something called insolvency status. That happened on the 11th of August. I asked around a little bit, and insolvency isn't the same as bankruptcy. In the EU, it's a way to protect a company from bankruptcy while they reorganize their financial business. German laws are different than U.S. laws, and I don't know any German financial experts that could school me on the subtleties of this insolvency status. But an article that I was able to roughly translate basically says that the big new state-of-the-art facility that Touratech built in Germany in 2016 cost them about 10 million euros, which is almost $12 million in the US. And that put them in kind of a tough financial spot. I'm sure that everything's going to be okay over there at Touratech AG. But because I like to know things and I like to report on things, I put in a call to Paul Gillian, who is the CEO of Touratech USA and will be one of our interview subjects in a later episode. He said that, and this is a quote from him, Touratech AG will continue to operate and produce parts just under protection from creditors. The German government seeks to preserve jobs and see German companies continue to operate with these reorganization rules. Paul put that out. He conversed with me, and then he put that out in a press release after the news broke. He really needed to assure his U.S.-based customers that Touratech USA's operations aren't affected by the reorganization of the company in Germany. Everything's business as usual at Touratech USA. He was very emphatic in stating that. I think it's important to remember that applying concepts about insolvency, reorganization, and bankruptcy from our experience in the United States isn't necessarily going to give us the best, most accurate information or analysis about Touratech AG's current situation, and certainly not their future as a viable company. Touratech's been around for a long time. I expect them to be around for a long time. The EU and Germany have different financial laws than the US does, and I don't see Touratech going away anytime soon. But no matter what happens, whether it's positive or negative, I'll be sure to stay on top of the whole situation and let you know what's going on with Touratech AG as more information is available. So looking at the last couple issues of Cycle News, and I want to thank them again for partnering with me for the podcast. And I think I said their website already, but I'll say it again. It's pretty easy to remember, cyclenews.com. There's a good number of things to talk about, and I want to look at some racing news first. it's starting to look more and more like Cameron Beaubier is prepping to make the jump from superbike racing here in the States. He competes in the Moto America Series to World Superbike. His name's been mentioned numerous times as a possible replacement for Nicky Hayden on the Red Bull Honda team. Though he certainly has international competition for that slot, I think replacing Hayden with an American rider would say a lot about Honda's commitment to motorcycle racing in this country, as well as Nicky Hayden's legacy in the racing world. It never hurts to have a fast rider on your bike, and that will certainly draw attention at some level. Attention leads to sales. Beaubier continues winning Moto America races, even though he's currently in second place in the standings, trailing series leader Tony Elias by 70 points. Beaubier won both races at Sonoma in California, which just shows how strong of a rider he is. Of course, nothing in racing is ever written in stone, but I've seen Cameron race and met him a couple of times. He's a nice guy. He's got a good attitude, and he's probably one of the most focused racers that I've met. You don't see that level of focus and intensity in everybody that gets out on the track. I think he really has a shot at making the transition to World Superbike and doing well on that circuit after he gets settled. Not strictly racing news, but certainly interesting nonetheless, is the quest for ever higher speed records. Some new land speed records for motorcycles got set on August 8th at the world's largest salt flat, which is in Uyuni. I think that's how you pronounce it, but anybody can feel free to email me a correction on that. Uyuni, Bolivia, which is east of the Andes Mountains down there in South America. There were some Streamliner riders that were there with the attempt to get to 400 miles an hour, but unfortunately they didn't get to that goal. So let's go back and look at the partial Streamliners who did set some new records. A guy from Texas called Al Lamb, like the animal, broke the world record on August 6th. He was riding a Honda CBR 1000RR, highly modified, turned into a partial Streamliner. And the average of his first two big runs came in at 265.8 miles per hour, which is kind of mind-blowingly fast on a motorcycle. Ralph Hudson, another American, followed up the next day on a Suzuki GSXR 1000 based machine with a run of 274 miles per hour. He had clutch problems, he had overheating problems, but he came back on the 9th with another run of 281 miles an hour. Lamb answered back, getting an average run of 280.8, but then Hudson just kind of put the hammer down and turned in an average run time or run speed of 285 miles an hour. That was built on his highest speed run of the day, which got to 289 miles an hour. I can't even imagine what it must feel like riding a motorcycle at 289 miles an hour. That's just mind-boggling how fast that is. I may have had a motorcycle up to 100 on a very abandoned, very long, very straight highway in rural Nevada. I may have had a motorcycle up to closer to 120 on a racetrack once, and I was scared half to death both times. I can't even imagine what 289 miles an hour must feel like, but maybe I can track down Ralph Hudson and we can talk to him and see what 289 miles an hour feels like. Looking at other motorcycle industry news, there's some information coming out about a company called Bajaj Auto. Now, once again, I don't know if that's exactly how it's pronounced. It's an Indian company. Their Bajaj headquartered in Pune, India. They make motorcycles, scooters, and motorized rickshaws. Rickshaws, those you see them in movies all the time, documentaries about big city life in Asia. They're those little two-seater open-air kind of foot-powered taxis. Sometimes there's a dude like pulling it behind him. Other times it's a person on a bicycle, like a three-wheeler with two back seats. But you see them in big cities all across Asia, cheap, reliable transportation that the owner can use to make a little bit of money. Bajaj currently owns 47% of KTM, and they just announced a strategic alliance with Triumph. So Bajaj and Triumph will be developing new models together, but there's no word yet on if Triumph is going to start manufacturing motorcycles in India. Bajaj recently lost their top spot in India's motorcycle market. They lost it to Eicher Motors, which is the company that owns Royal Enfield. So most people that are into motorcycles have at least heard of Royal Enfield. You might not know that the iconic English brand has been made only in India for the past couple of decades. But Royal Enfield is still very much alive, still very much on the market. They sell, obviously thousands and thousands of motorcycles in India, and they're kind of making a little bit of a comeback in the US. They're kind of cashing in on that whole retro bike craze that's going on. At any rate, this partnership between Triumph and Bajaj is very likely to produce a bike that is under 400 cc's, probably closer to 300. That's a very popular displacement level in India based on their licensing and taxing schemes. It probably won't be too much different than the G310R that BMW is making in India with their partner, the TVS Motor Company. So we could see some new technology, some new bikes coming out of that partnership. And of course, we'll keep you posted as that develops. Now, I know that I've already talked about racing once this episode. I'm going to talk about racing again. I know motorcycle racing isn't a huge field of interest for a lot of people, but it's exciting. And I think it's exciting enough that more American riders should be paying attention to it. So I'm going to talk about it. Especially when we're into the summer and fall, when there's a lot of races going on. They kind of break around the late fall and winter part of the year all over the world, just because nobody likes riding in the cold. And when it comes to racing, the technology that gets used on tracks all around the world by all the major manufacturers does eventually trickle down into our street bikes, which is really apparent with the BMW S1000RR Superbike. Everybody knows how I feel about BMW motorcycles. I won't belabor that point, but let's talk about Polaris for a minute. Now, normally when you think motorcycle racing, you don't think of a company like Polaris. They don't make a sport bike. They don't make a super bike, certainly. They might be involved in snowmobile racing or something like that. I don't follow snowmobile racing, so I don't know. But Polaris is an established motorsports manufacturer. A few years ago, most people know that they kind of decided to swing for the fences and take on the American brand of Indian. You might not think that Indian's big, bulky cruisers have much to do with racing, but that just means that you kind of missed out on the news that Indian is tearing up the flat track circuit with a brand new bike and a group that they're evoking Indian's past by calling the new Wrecking Crew. This new iteration of the fabled Wrecking Crew is dominating flat track racing now, just like the original Wrecking Crew did decades ago. And the new riders are three guys called Brian Smith, Brad Baker, and Jared Meese. Meese is actually currently leading the American Flat Track Championship standings. Brian, who they call Flying Brian, was the 2016 Grand National Champion, and he even won a gold medal in the 2015 X Games. He's currently, got the number one plate on the AMA flat track circuit. All three of them are riding these purpose-built Indian Scout FTR 750 motorcycles. The FTR 750 has a 4-valve 750cc V-twin. It kind of slots into this gap between Indian's Scout 60 and their regular Scout. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see a street bike based on the FTR 750 hit dealerships in maybe the next year or two. They might even make the Scout 60 redundant in Indian's lineup if they have a bike under the displacement of the standard Scout. Certainly putting out a street version of that flat track racer would be a clear indicator that Polaris isn't only using Indian's cruiser background, but is stepping up after the elimination of Victory to pour technology and experience into expanding Indian's line, making it more widely appealing to American riders beyond the cruiser market. I don't know if we'll ever see an Indian sport tourer like Yamaha's FJR 1300 or the bikes being made by Modus down in Alabama, but I really expect Indian to make a move to capture some more of the American motorcycle market share by expanding their style offerings. And certainly if you're interested in flat track racing, which is, it's kind of the cage fighting equivalent of motorcycle racing. I mean, these guys are out there in the dirt, foot down, left turns, right turns, getting it done, jumps, and all that kind of stuff. It's a little more ground based than motocross or supercross, but they definitely have jumps and some obstacles in their tracks. The AMA's American Flat Track Series has 4 race weekends left in 2017. They got 3 of them in September and 1 in October. I think the one in October is in California. 2 of the 3 in September. One's in Pennsylvania, one's in Texas. I don't remember where the other one is. But you can learn more by checking out their website. It's real easy to remember, AmericanFlatTrack.com. And of course, you can look at the schedules and coverage in Cycle News. Their website, is CycleNews.com. And I want to thank them again for partnering with me for the podcast. Next up is, of course, our interview segment. And I told you last week that the podcast, Chasing the Horizon, is not meant to be BMW specific. I meant that 100%. It's also not meant to be an adventure bike specific podcast, which in the BMW world means any bike that closes with GS or GS Adventure. It just happens to be pure coincidence, I swear, that my first 2 guests are not only BMW riders, but R1200 GS riders as well. Pure coincidence, I promise. So please don't despair. I will be talking to people who ride other models of BMWs, and I will be talking to people who don't ride BMWs at all. I can think of 2 people that I talked to already that I've got interviews in the can for who don't own a BMW currently, and one of them who has never owned a BMW. So, and unlike most of the interviews that you're going to hear in future episodes, this episode's interview is with somebody that I know very well. She's been my friend for a number of years. As a matter of fact, she is the only person besides myself that I have ever allowed my daughter to ride with on a motorcycle. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and I'll talk to you again when it wraps up. The interview portion of this episode is with Tina Venters, who is not just a friend of mine that I've known for quite some time, but a really impressive motorcycle rider with tons and tons of miles under her belt. And in July of 2017, she completed her first Iron Butt Rally. So, Tina, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
For the people that don't know, real quick, right before we start talking about the good stuff, how would you explain the Iron Butt Rally to somebody who rides motorcycles but has never heard of the Iron Butt Rally? How would you kind of express to them what it's all about?
It probably the simplest terms would be to say it's a really big scavenger hunt. Going and looking for different bonuses across the country, up and into Canada, different locations, planning your time. So it would really just be going out and looking for different objects for points and gathering up points for 11 days, basically. Right.
So instead of like a teenage scavenger hunt where you have to bring back a rock from a creek or something, you go, so what's a bonus? Explain that to people that wouldn't know.
This year, the theme of the rally was a photo safari.
Okay.
So we were looking for 5 different kinds of animals, water, land, prehistoric, mythical, and Air. Thank you. And so
what, dragons and giraffes and eagles?
Dragons, giraffes, all that are statues.
Okay.
One that may be familiar that people could Google easily is Dennis Weaver has a giant, probably 6-foot eagle memorial out west.
Somewhere.
I forgot which state.
That's okay. They'll Google it. They'll know.
When you visit as many states, you forget which one you were actually in.
Yeah.
But I think maybe near Wyoming.
Okay.
Very beautiful place. And our goal was to go there and get a picture of this eagle. And we would get points for obtaining that bonus.
Gotcha.
So that would be a bonus.
And then you try to string a whole bunch of those together. The object of which being to get the most points, and whoever has the most points at the end of the rally wins.
Yes.
So it's a pretty straight. I like the comparison of a scavenger hunt
Yes.
because I think that's something that people can grip onto. We've all done that.
Yes.
You just, in this case, you're adding motorcycles and then putting a really specific time restriction on the whole thing, right? How long is the Iron Butt Rally?
It is 11 days of riding, 11 days and 10, probably 11 nights because it goes until 5 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Some people ride a lot of nighttime riding. Some people do daytime riding. I do a little bit of both.
Okay.
But basically, roughly 11 days.
Okay. And so I want to talk about the bike you used in the rally, but first I want you to tell us about your very first motorcycle and how that came into your life.
I started riding through a friend of mine. He had a K1100 RS and really enjoyed that motorcycle, and he suggested that I ride. And at the time, I didn't even know women rode motorcycles. Never even seen a woman on a motorcycle.
No kidding.
By herself.
And you were living in Illinois then?
Yes. So it was very conservative, and I ended up buying a K75S, BMW K75S.
Good choice.
It was a wonderful motorcycle. It was a little tall for me and a little heavy, but it was a great, great motorcycle. I really did enjoy it. I learned to ride on it. I went to a few MOA rallies, a few RA rallies, met a lot of people, and then found out that there's this whole other world of women riding.
Right. So so when you started riding, you didn't know that women riders was a thing, and then you got involved with the MOA a little bit, and you discovered that not only was it a thing, but that you weren't even remotely alone.
No, not even close.
That's really great. And that was, what, 12 or 13 years ago?
Yes, roughly, yeah.
So you went from a K75S 12 years ago to the Iron Butt Rally
Yes.
2 weeks ago from when we're talking.
Yes, yes.
That's pretty amazing. Now I know a little bit about I didn't know that the K75 was your first bike. I thought that was just, one along the line, maybe your first BMW. But I know how you got to where you are now, but tell us a little bit about the other bikes you had in between, and then we'll talk about your Iron Butt bike.
So after the K75S, I decided to trade to a little bit more lighter bike, more sport touring, and I went to an R1200 ST, again another BMW.
That was the one with the funky front end.
The one that everybody says had the ugliest headlight, which was fine with me. I didn't have to look at it.
That's right. From the saddle, you can't see the headlight.
That's right. I didn't mind it. And I put roughly 60,000 miles on that and had a wreck, and it was totaled. So then I went to a BMW K1300 GT and put roughly 90,000 on that. And I really, really enjoyed that bike. But again, it was a little tall, a little top heavy, and I wanted to do more rallies. And doing a rally, probably 90% of your rallies are on paved roads, but there are a few that can be on gravel road or dirt roads. And I wanted something that was going to be durable, and my GT was just way too pretty to be durable.
That was a beautiful bike.
So I traded that in and got the BMW R1200 GS Adventure lowered from the factory.
Water cooled, right?
Water-cooled.
Is it a 15 or a 16?
It's a 15.
Okay.
I was the first one on the East Coast to get a lowered bike from the factory. And so I was a little bit of a test subject around here. But they had a little bit of problems with the diagnostics and everything with the shocks and the ESA. And so BMW had to do some computer updates and stuff like that. So the first couple of months were a little tricky, but they got it all ironed out. And
Clearly.
it was the perfect bike. I had that thing loaded to the gills and heavy, but manageable. Very, very durable, manageable bike. So it's great.
One of the things, I do have to give you a little bit of grief because you and I know what I'm going to say because you gave us GS riders grief for years about how ugly our bikes were. So we were all very pleased when you bought a GS Adventure, which I think is even uglier than the regular GS. But I like the way that you focused on what you wanted the motorcycle to do rather than what it looked like, because a lot of people kind of do get tied up in what their bike looks like or what the bike looks like. And you know, you were experienced with our bikes, so you weren't foreign to the Boxer motor, but you know, there was that long history of picking on GS riders, and now you're one of us. So
Yes.
I would like to know a little bit about how you prepped the bike for the Iron Butt Rally, because you know, normal riding is normal riding, and we all kind of, you know, take a trip here and there for a week or maybe even two. But I know when I go on vacation, I don't ride 11 or 1,200 miles a day for 10 or 11 days in a row. So there are absolutely unique things that you have to do to be able to not just have a bike survive that kind of treatment, but for you to survive on it.
Right.
So what kind of things did you have to do to get the bike prepped for this big Iron Butt Rally?
It was a really long process, and the Iron Butt Association will give you approximately 18 months to get ready for the Iron Butt Rally. And the biggest mistake I think mainly me and I'm sure other people made was 18 months is a long time.
Right.
No, it's really not.
It goes by really quick.
It went by really fast. And the thing is you think you know what you want and you start to put it together, but until you throw things on the bike and then ride it, you don't really know. And lucky for me, I have a very supportive fiance that was very much on board with helping me decide what I needed to do and helping me get that. So we would just start grabbing things. And one of the first things that I think everybody would agree on is if you're going to be on a bike for 11 days doing 11,000 miles, you need a new seat.
Yeah.
So BMW makes great motorcycles, but they are awful at making seats. So we tossed the seat, and I actually went through two. I bought a Rocky Mayer seat, and it was good. I think he does a great job making seats, but for me and my riding style, it just didn't work. I could ride 600 or 700 miles, and I was pretty sore and getting tired by the end of the day. So,
And that's a pretty, for people that go on long trips, 600 or 700 miles is usually a big day. So
Yes.
for a normal person,
yes.
it probably would have worked okay. But you're talking about doing 1,000 miles or more a day for almost 2 straight weeks.
Yes, so I needed something that was going to be nice the entire day and that I wasn't going to dread getting on the very next morning either.
When you're sore and you didn't sleep
Yes.
much.
So I went the next best thing, which was the Russell Daylong. And they did a phenomenal job. I sent them pictures and got the seat, and out of the box, I believe my first trip with that seat was to Illinois. It was 750 miles from my house. And
One way, yeah.
did not have a problem. Went there, went back the next day. Did not have a problem at all.
So 1,500 miles in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So that you would call the Russell Daylong truth in advertising.
Yes.
It's good for the whole day.
It was fantastic. And I have to admit, I have 63,000 miles on my bike now, and probably, I don't know, 20,000 on that Russell, and it's amazing the difference it made. When I was doing the Iron Butt Rally, every single night I would get off the bike and I'm like, well, okay, I'm stopping here because it's time. I'm not stopping because I needed to drag myself off the bike. I still felt good, and getting on the next morning, I'm loading up and just going. I didn't even hesitate to get on the bike.
Awesome.
So that was great. Lights was definitely a second.
Yeah, especially with all the night riding that you were looking at, sometimes even having to ride overnight.
Yes. We went with Clearwater Lights.
They make good stuff.
They make good stuff, and they are very good at customer service and warranty. I actually had a light that went out right before the rally, and I called him up, and he's like, send it in, we'll fix it. And I said, really? And he says, it happens so few times that they don't hesitate to fix them. And actually what they ended up doing was shipping a new one to the dealer in Minneapolis, and they threw it on for me before the rally. So they have great customer service. And when you're out in Wyoming and South Dakota and Utah, when you see sign after sign after sign that says open range, you want to make sure that you have lights that work at night.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where those animals are going to be.
Absolutely.
So that was a huge concern for me. And
so how many extra lights did you add to your bike?
I have 6. I have 4 Clearwater lights, 2 big ones, and then 2 small ones on the front. And then I also have Jerry Skeen's photon blasters on the front as well.
The yellows.
The yellow ones. So
did you set them up to work as turn signals too?
Yes. I wanted to be able to see during fog, during rain, just everything that you can do to be seen in any different kind of weather situation.
Yeah, and you have Skeens on the back of your bike too.
Yes,
and I can attest to, I have Skeens on the back of my bikes, and I've followed people. We're lucky we know Jerry Skeen. We were, part of kind of his test bed.
Yes.
With our club, BMW Bikers of Metropolitan Washington in the DC area. Jerry lives in Northern Virginia, so we had access to him. But those lights make such a huge difference in bad weather and fog, especially. I think that's kind of an essential add to just about any kind of riding.
When I got the bike from the dealer, Jerry's lights were one of the first ones we put on. So I refused to ride a bike without his lights. They're so important, especially with rain. I think that's the biggest thing. Rain and fog, you want other people to see you.
Yeah.
So those were big.
So you did the seat for literally all day comfort, lights, not only for your visibility, but for other people's visibility to see you coming. What else did you do? Because I'm kind of leading in the direction, because I know that let's talk about gas capacity, right? Because what's the size? The size of the stock fuel tank on a GS Adventure is what?
7.93.
7.9. Oh, not just 7.9, but 7.93. And it's important to know that, because the Iron Butt Association and the rally especially, they have a limit on how much fuel you can have on board your motorcycle to kind of level the playing field.
Yes.
So
they have 11.50 gallons, including the fuel through your lines.
Right.
So they test every ounce of fuel that goes through your bike. So one of my bigger challenges, but one that I was very thankful for, was Mike Langford in San Diego, California, makes fuel cells. He does a ton of them for the Iron Butt Rally. And so he knows what he's doing, and he knows what they require. Where I threw a kink in things is Mike's typical fuel cells are long and flat and rectangle. So you take off the top case, you lay this flat briefcase looking type thing down, and then you put another Pelican briefcase on top as your top case.
So he makes it so you can mount a top case on top of his fuel cell.
Yes. I did not want that. I like the BMW top case, and I wanted to keep that. So since I already had a fairly decent sized fuel tank, I wanted just a smaller fuel cell to add just a little bit more insurance. So I wanted one that would fit on the passenger seat only.
Okay.
I only needed a 3.23 gallon tank. And so in my mind, it was a piece of cake.
Right.
When you're talking to somebody on the other side of the country who doesn't even have a GS Adventure, that was very difficult. We had to do a lot of drawings, a lot of photographs, a lot of phone calls. At one point, we FaceTimed him to show him. He did send us some tanks and they didn't fit.
Okay.
So that was very, very frustrating for both of us. I felt horrible for him because they were beautiful, but you get them on the back seat and they ran into different problems. So we ended up
Clearance, you couldn't
FaceTime.
open this, you couldn't move that.
They couldn't mount to the bike. And with the IBA rules, you can't just strap a fuel cell to the bike.
Right.
It has to be mounted securely to the frame of the bike. That somehow.
Yeah.
So we had it bolted to the frame of the bike underneath the passenger seat. Take the passenger seat off and frame it there. And so with a little bit of work and a lot of communication, he came up with a beautiful fuel cell.
Awesome.
And it worked perfectly. And we also found a new way to run the lines to where you didn't have to drill the tank. You drilled a little teeny tiny hole on the filter on the top of the tank, and you ran the line. So I don't have a shutoff valve. The fuel will just drain as the main tank goes down. The fuel cell
Awesome.
will fill it. So that was another great thing, because when you're tired and you're riding a long day and you go to flip that switch and you've already flipped it, now you're scrambling trying to find gas because you forgot
Right.
that you put that switch down.
Now suddenly you're in trouble.
Now you're in trouble. So with this method, it worked out great. So my fuel gauge, when it said I had 50 miles left, I had 50 miles left.
Right, because it would just keep filling as your correct me if I'm wrong, as your main tank would go down, it would automatically kind of pull the fuel out of the cell.
Yes.
So your tank stayed full until your cell was empty, and then your tank would start to empty.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And since the computer is based on the main fuel tank, it didn't tell you that you had 400 miles to
Right.
go. It would tell you that you had 320 miles to go 400 miles. It would never
Right.
change.
Right.
So that was very comforting. So when you started to see that number go down, you knew that your fuel was actually, that's what your mileage really was.
Yeah, and I have an ox tank on one of my bikes, my sidecar rig, because it gets terrible gas mileage. And that's something that I always worried about. Did I already flip the switch?
Mm-hmm.
And I just came up with different ways to, kind of mark that. The fuel light came on, I flipped the switch. I would, the next time I stopped, I would take my key out and turn it around so it was in kind of backwards. You know how the older BMWs have that offset triangle key?
Yes.
So, and backwards, forwards, it's kind of relative. But I would much rather not have to worry about it. But it sounds like you guys came up with a really great solution.
Yes. Again, my fiance did a lot of research, a lot of looking at how other people did it, and he figured out, he tried it on his bike first. Luckily, he has the exact same bike, so we kind of tested his bike, and he drilled his, I wish I knew, I'm sorry I don't know that,
Like
but
the-
it was
the
like
filler cap at the top.
cap at the top. He drilled that, and he did his fuel tank and his fuel cell, and it worked perfectly. So then he moved on to mine, and it worked.
Yeah, and that was a good idea too, I think, because then if you screwed something up or if it didn't work right, then you hadn't modified your bike.
Yes.
You test on his and go into production on yours.
Yes.
So we got butt comfort. I mean, it's not called the Iron Butt Rally for nothing.
That's right.
Lights, fuel. What else did you do to get your bike ready?
Then the rest of it was mainly dash stuff. I added a second GPS so that I could have one that was taking me where I needed to go, and then another one that would maybe have like the whole day planned out, so I could see where I was going the rest of the day and try to have a feel for how my day was going. And if I needed to modify my day a little bit, I had a second GPS that I could mess with that would not affect what I was doing in my main goal. And that was very helpful.
So what kind of GPS units did you use?
I ended up going with 2 Nav6s.
Okay.
That way, since the Nav6 fits into the bike, if anything went wrong with that one, I could just put the other one in there as well.
There you go. And for people that are listening that may not know what a NAV6 is, that's the BMW branded version of a Garmin GPS unit that's made to plug right into the wiring harness of BMW motorcycles. And the modern BMW motorcycles have that little, we call it the Wonder Wheel. I don't know if that's what they call it. We call it the Wonder Wheel. And because it's plugged right into the system, you can control some aspects of the GPS operation right from your left hand grip. Mm-hmm. So that, I think having one of those is a good idea, but having two of them is smart, like you said, because if one goes bad, you can just pop it out of the cradle and throw it up there, and you've got computer control again.
Yes, and it's a great GPS. It gives you all the information about your bike at one glance.
Oh, really? So it tells you, like tire pressure and all that other stuff.
Your engine temperatures, your fuel consumption, your overall moving average, your speeding average. It gives you a lot of information. So it was great, and using that Wonder Wheel is very safe and easy to do because I'm not reaching in front of me trying to do anything. Yeah. So that little thumb wheel was perfect. And
they do, the way it's mounted, the way the NAV6 is mounted on your motorcycle. Once again, I don't own one that new, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's up pretty high, and it's really kind of just under your line of vision as you look forward from the seat anyways.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's in a pretty good place for not being distracted.
Right.
Not like on your car where you have to look down to the middle of that center panel.
Absolutely. Yes, it's right. You barely move your eyes. You're still right in the line of vision of seeing the road, seeing what's in front of you. The number one thing that everybody tells you is, be safe, as safe as you can. And that's what we try to practice. I also added a radar detector,
which is illegal in Virginia.
But it's not illegal as far as I can tell anywhere else. And it's not necessarily for speeding high speeds. I mean, when you go out west, your speed limit's 80. So if you need a radar detector because you're doing more than 80, you're way out of my league.
Ticket, yeah.
That's not me. My typical, almost every ticket I've ever gotten been in a 45 mile an hour speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's you're going 55 or 60 or something.
That is my danger zone, and that's what I needed, was just something to remind me, slow down when you're coming to a town and stuff like that. When you're out in the middle of the country and all of a sudden this little town pops up out of nowhere, and there they sit with a 45 mile an hour speed limit, and half a mile later it's 35, and a half mile it's 25, and it's just like kills you. But it's just mainly it was for that kind of thing.
A little wake up call when you get lit up like that, and you hear. Did you have it?
I did
visual
not.
Or sound?
I did the visual. I did not think of the sound quick enough. I probably would add the sound, but I did have the visual. I have a 3-light module that sits above my GPS.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a remote light, and then I have the sensor down bottom. But I could see the 3-digit light. It was very LED light. So,
there you go. So nice
middle of the
bright.
Day, it was bright. It got your attention.
Good. And any tickets?
No tickets.
No tickets. That's awesome.
Very good with that. It worked great.
Yeah.
And then what the IBA requires, and I also added a bracket for, was the spot tracker.
Okay.
And I have always ridden with the spot as long as I've known about them.
As a matter of fact, you gave me one of your old units when you updated and got a new unit.
I am a big believer in the spot trackers. And the IBA also required us to have those. We got bonus points for having those run all the time.
Do you know if this was the first rally they required it? Because I know that there was a lot of talk in 2015. A lot of people were using. I thought everybody was using them, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they had bonus points last time as well. I might be wrong about that, but I thought they required them last time as well.
It's entirely possible.
But they're just so easy to mount to your bike, and it's a great. For me, I started using it just purely out of safety because probably 90% of my riding was done by myself.
Right.
So when I was going cross country, if I was to break down and I'm out of cell service, the spot tracker was a great peace of mind.
Yeah, you hit the button and they come find you.
Yes. And
have you talked to, sorry to interrupt, but you know Kirsten Talkin Spalding, and she crashed and activated hers.
Yeah, let me correct that a little bit. She didn't really crash.
Okay.
She got up. She was riding at night, going up a trail, not a road.
Right.
But it was a trail.
She dropped it.
And she
didn't
dropped
crash.
it. And she had dropped it, I think, a couple of times because she was on a trail. And where that sign said trail, I don't know. I think she found it the next day. But I don't think she knew she was on a trail. I think she thought she was on a dirt road or something.
Yeah.
So I think, like most of us, you just keep pushing forward and eventually you're going to get back onto normal road. And it just didn't happen for her. And the blessings of this spot is you have options. You can send a help request that will notify the local authorities, and it'll notify your friends that says, I'm okay, I'm not hurt, but I need help.
Yeah.
And I'm stuck. She was up in Washington State somewhere in the woods in a national park and did not have cell service.
Right.
So she couldn't call for help. And so the GPS, the spot will send the exact GPS coordinates, and the sheriff department didn't have any problems finding her bike at all. So that was very comforting. And if you're hurt, you can send 911, and they will send, an ambulance and stuff like that. And it says, I am hurt, and this is what I look like. And they know what to come find.
So when you, in that relation, then let's say, God forbid you were to get in a crash and you're hurt, what do you think are and this is a completely, tangent. If the spot is mounted to your bike and you become separated from the bike and both your legs are broken or your pelvis is shattered, so did you think about maybe mounting the spot on your jacket or something so it was with you all the time?
I did not. That's probably something I regret, and that's probably something that I will definitely change because I expect to continue riding. The one thing that I have seen that I have not experimented with is Aerostitch sells a Velcro wrap around your arm.
Yeah.
And they have a little pouch, and you can put it on the pouch. Now, somebody said, well, if you fall off the bike, is the pouch going to rip off? And then you lose it.
Right.
That's a risk also. It will fit in a pocket on my wrist, but I can't see it.
Right.
So when you're on a rally and you're getting points for it working, you need to have some kind of visual that it is working.
Verify.
Yes. So trying to find that balance of, I do agree, probably having it on your body is probably safer, because if you do go down, you're right, you're probably going to hurt. So having it on your body is a safer place to do it, and I would strongly recommend people do that.
Yeah.
Find some way to get it on your. I saw another girl had a pouch on her leg for routing. She wrote her some hints down on her leg, so I know they make a pouch there, and she could have put her spot there. That may not have been a good place. It has to have direct view of the satellites up in the air.
Like a satellite phone or something.
Yeah.
Has to have
so the
line
leg
of sight.
probably is not a good place to do it because you're hunched over.
So maybe on your upper chest or your shoulder or your forearm or your
forearm is
what's
probably
this
going to
part
be
of your arm called?
Your shoulder, or your front arm, but it's still got to be someplace that you can see it. You got to remember you have a helmet on.
True.
So your forearm
sounds like a good solution.
is the best place, I think, if you can find a way to make it work. I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, so we talked a lot about how you prepped your bike, fuel, seat, etc. How did you prepare yourself? So you find out 18 months ahead of time that you're in the show, and now you've got 18 months to get ready, and 18 months to worry, and 18 months to everything. So how do you, like mentally and physically, how did you prepare Tina for the Iron Butt Rally?
For me, it was definitely a long process, and one of the things that helped me the most is I rode in the Butt Light, and that was a 6-day rally, started and ended in Denver, Colorado.
And that was last summer, right?
Last
2016.
Summer. Yes. So I did that. I had done several smaller rallies, 36, 40-hour rallies. Mm-hmm. But the Butt Light was a 6-day rally. So that was my first multi-day rally that was very similar to the Iron Butt Rally. So I did that one, and that one was intimidating for me. Looking at being on the bike for 6 days, trying to think of, the first thought was you want to make it to the finish, otherwise you DNF, and nobody wants to do not finish.
Right.
So that is very intimidating, very hard to focus on. So I struggled a little bit with the Butt Light, and afterwards I felt good. I'm like, okay, well, I finished it, so that wasn't as bad as I had thought it was.
Right.
And
Yay,
then,
me.
yeah, really. And then I have a wonderfully great friend, Nancy Oswald. Probably most people know her as Miss Kitty.
Yeah.
Who had done 2 Iron Butt rallies, and she's done a number of multi-day rallies.
She's hardcore.
She's very much hardcore, and it's her fault really that I got into the Iron Butt rally, because she got me hooked on it.
Yeah.
So I blame her for my addiction to this long days and everyday riding. And we did a lot of talking back and forth, and probably the biggest help was you don't look at it as 11 days of riding. Luckily, you have checkpoints.
Right.
And we had 2 checkpoints in Dallas, one on Wednesday and one on Saturday. So you ride for 3 days, you check into a hotel, and you get scored, and you tell everybody you're doing fine and how you feel. And you start at 4:00 in the morning the next day, and you go for another 3 days, and you come back and you check in. And
Yeah. So every 3 days, shower in a bed for at least 4 or 5 hours.
Yes. So that was when you started looking at your 11 days in chunks of leg 1, leg 2, leg 3, it definitely became more manageable.
Right.
So leg 1, leg 2, yep, no problem, got it. Leg 1, you try to get your system down and get how you're doing, and then leg 2, you just get a little bit more efficient. Leg 3 was 5 days. I had to count on my fingers. Leg 3 was 5 full days of riding and no checkpoints.
Right.
So that one was a little bit longer, but by then you're in a routine.
Yeah.
So you're okay. So building up to the Iron Butt Rally, that was the things that Nancy and I would talk about, was how you look at it. Make sure that you got sleep. I would start doing longer and longer rides. I would buzz over to Illinois and be back, by Saturday night or something, or I'd buzz down to Georgia and back, or Tampa, Florida. A lot of my family were very accommodating and very understanding, because I'd show up, have dinner, go to bed, and leave the next morning before they got up. Yes. Yeah. So they were very wonderful with helping me with that. And that just kind of builds up your efficiencies with gas stops and eating. And I had packed a lot of snack food to take with me. And then I had also mounted a snack cup on my bike. I have a flip-up helmet, so I could just reach in there, grab something to eat. I had a Camelback that I kept with water. Mm-hmm. Hydration is huge. And when you're not used to drinking water all the time, you kind of have to practice that as well. And so I would just sip on the water like all day long. The hotter it was, the more sipping I did.
Yeah, so I gotta ask, and you can feel free to say I'm not answering that question, but you're drinking all that water. What happens if you gotta pee?
Well,
you don't want to stop. You're on a mission. You're trying to get to the next bonus.
Not only do you not want to stop, there are times that you can't stop.
Right.
Because when you get out to New Mexico, Wyoming, Texas, West Texas, your towns are few and far between. So the other thing you have to remember is you're in the heat of the summer. Mm-hmm. So I may be drinking a ton of water, but I don't have to pee very often because I am sweating a lot, which is why you need to drink more and more water.
Right.
So luckily, about the time I had to go pee, I also needed gas. So I was pretty good at holding it. And if there was a time that you just couldn't, you had to stop and jump off the bike, run into the gas station, and
Yeah. Or the bushes.
Yeah, no.
I guess so. That may be the one time that men have an advantage in the Iron Butt Rally over women.
Over motorcycles, I have to admit, I am so jealous of your point and shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, out in the woods, out in the country, on the highways, You guys can stand and point and shoot.
Yeah.
We have to go inside. And when you're out in the western part of the country, you don't know what animals or snakes or anything else are around that. Because
Nobody wants to get bit on the butt by a snake.
no, I don't really have a problem with squatting, but I do have a problem with sharing it with snakes. So it's not going to happen. Not going to do it.
So, talk about a little bit about when you finished the rally at the end of that 11 days, all that preparation, all that practice, all that work culminates. You're sitting at the scoring table. What's going through your head?
Oh my gosh, your heart is racing. Because everything is based on a point system,
Right.
not a mileage system. And if you look at everything, Iron Butt Rally, 11,000 miles in 11 days, that's what I thought the rally was. And quite honest, I was in the middle of the rally before I found out that it really wasn't a mileage rally, it's a point rally. It just so happens probably the average of the lowest miles and the highest miles ridden probably average out to around 11,000. There
Sure.
are several people that rode 12, 13,000 miles, and then there are several people that rode 7 or 8,000 miles. So average 11, I get that. But it's mainly a point system. Well, no matter how many miles you ride, you could ride 20,000 miles. If you don't get enough points to finish, you don't finish. So everything is based on the pictures that you take. Did you take the right pictures? There are some bonus locations that were time restricted, sunset or daytime only or nighttime only. If you take a nighttime only bonus and sunset is at 8:34 and you took your picture at 8:30, you don't get points for that because it's technically not nighttime yet.
And I know there was one bonus in Canada, I think, that was only accessible by ferry, and it was also time restricted. So if you got on the wrong ferry, or if you missed the ferry, if you timed it wrong, you would lose 12 or even 24 hours, and you'd be completely screwed.
Yeah. So it's very intimidating. And when you're sitting at that scoring table with a person that really does want you to finish, even though they're also the bad person that's going
Right.
to tell you if you don't get the points, they really are on your side. And the volunteers that work this place are just so phenomenal. And they look at all of our pictures. They look at our call-in bonuses, our rest bonus receipts, make sure our receipts are accurate. And the whole time you're thinking you took your time, you wrote down everything correctly, but what if you didn't?
Right.
So when I was being scored, my heart was just racing. I know I was holding my breath a couple of times, and not that I thought I did anything wrong. I couldn't see my mistake, and
Right.
that is also very uncommon. You know, a lot of people make mistakes because they're in a hurry or they're tired or they just simply forget. So there are a lot of mistakes, and I just couldn't see any. And so when she was scoring me, they didn't find any.
Nice.
So I was beyond thrilled that I did not leave what they call points on the table.
And I have to say that I'm really, we've been friends for probably 10 years.
At least.
You've watched my daughter grow up. You're basically the only person not in my family that I trust to carry her on a motorcycle. But I think from listening to Mike, your fiance, and you and my wife that was calling you every now and then, I think the happiest I've ever been for you, even happier than when I found out that you guys had finally decided to get married and set a date. The happiest I've ever been for you was when I found out you did the whole rally without leaving any points on the table,
Yes.
which I think is just a tremendous accomplishment.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how impressed I am that's how you finished your rally.
Well, thank you. That in itself is a huge accomplishment. And, that's another thing too, during that rally, during those 11 days, having people like your wife calling me, and Nancy calling me, and Mike calling me, and my cousin calling me every day, just to break up the monotony and remind you that you are having fun. And I love talking to people because I was having fun, and this is what I saw, this is where I'm going. And My cousin thought I was nuts because I'd go from Wyoming to Colorado, back to Wyoming. And, she's like, "Kid, do you not know where you're going?" So, it was fun. And it was definitely an adventure and a challenge. But it felt really, really good to accomplish this challenge.
Yeah. And so I'm sure you remember your place at the end of the rally, which was 54. How many people finished the rally?
87.
So you were 54th out of 87. A lot of people would look at those two numbers and go, well, she didn't really do that good. But were you trying to win?
No.
So what was your goal?
My goal was to finish. And that probably was my biggest goal, and that was why my first leg in 1 and 2 were very conservative routes. You are to show up at the checkpoint by 5 o'clock, or you could start showing up at 5 o'clock on leg 1. I think I was there by 2:30.
Okay.
So my fear of not finishing overrode my fear of being competitive. So it's a very hard thing to do. I think there were 117 riders and 106 bikes that started.
Yeah.
And 87 bikes finished. So it's very challenging, and to know that many people can drop out for whatever reasons, personal reasons, bike reasons.
Yeah, there's always bike failures, and inevitably there's always bike failures. Unfortunately, there's crashes, other collisions, other kind of problems with that. People, it happens rarely, but a couple of people have even died doing the Iron Butt Rally. But when you get right down to it, some people just kind of give up in the middle. They realize that they can't do this. They thought they could, and they get in the middle of it, and now they realize that they can't.
Yeah, there was a couple of those that did that. Couldn't handle the heat, or the mileage was just more than what they thought. And even when you try to break it down like I did, just do a couple of days at a time. Even those couple of days can be overwhelming. When you finish the 3 and you realize at 4 a.m. you got to start another 3. It's not a whole lot of downtime, but. So that was my concern, was I didn't want to have to drop out. I wanted my bike to do well. I wanted me to do well. I ate at least one meal a day.
A real meal, not just like snack food.
Not just snack food. I'd eat at least one meal a day. I would take a shower if I could every night, if I trusted the hotel. I definitely stayed in a hotel every night. Now some of those hotels were a little scary.
So you rested every night.
Every night, I did.
I know that the guy that won has a reputation for being able to ride 48 to 60 hours straight.
Some of those guys had to. The 5, even though the spots only showed 4, there was actually 5 people that went to Newfoundland. To get to that ferry, they had to ride 36 hours to get there. Straight. Yeah. Just to get to the ferry on time to get over there.
To get the time restricted bonus on the other end.
Yes.
Yeah, brutal.
Yes. So, there were some people that would ride. There are some people that would ride 24 hours, but then they got 8 hours of sleep.
Right.
They needed to make up some of that sleep.
So they kind of butt 2 rest sessions up against each other.
Yes. So I was a little bit more conservative, where I wanted to eat well, I wanted to sleep well, and I wanted to maintain my body so that I could finish.
Yeah.
If or when I do it again, I may be a little bit more competitive.
Now that was going to be my next. I have 2 more questions for you, and number 1 is: do you think you'll do it in 19 or 21? Because they only do it every 2 years.
Every 2 years, and. Right now, Mike is going to try to apply.
Yeah?
Yes.
That's exciting. So are you guys going to do it at the same time, not necessarily as a team or together, but alternate so that you can support him?
Alternate. I would like to be on the sidelines and support him and be his meteorologist while he's riding across the country and stuff like that. And then maybe in 21 we both ride it together. But I think it was important for me to do it by myself, and I appreciated that. And I think he will appreciate being able to do it on his own as well. there are some people that ride together, but to me, that's a lot of pressure. Because if you
Sure.
start out as a team, if your bike breaks down, you just stop the rally for that other person
Yeah.
too. And that's a lot of pressure that I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So for him being this his would be his first rally, I would support him doing it on his own. So as of right now, we're hoping that he gets in, fingers crossed, in 19, and then maybe I'll do it again in 21.
Because as a finisher, if you want to do it again, aren't you automatically, or
You still have to be invited.
you still have to be invited? Okay.
You still
But you have
to
a
be
much
invited.
higher chance of being invited because you're a finisher.
Yes. Unless you've really done something stupid during
Right.
the rally.
Like ridden without a helmet or,
Yes,
you
or
know,
broken some rules.
Yeah.
They're very safety conscious, even in the parking lots. If they catch you, even before the rally, riding around the parking lot without your helmet,
Mm-hmm.
you could get disqualified before it even started.
well, and that's always been one of the tenets of the Iron Butt Association is safe
Yes.
long distance riding, not just long distance riding, but safe long distance riding.
Yes.
So last question. If somebody came, if I came to you and said, Tina, I'm thinking about doing the Iron Butt Rally, what's the one piece of advice? If you could only give me one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be to speed me on my way? Not that it's a race, you don't want to speed all the time, it's about points, not miles, but that's a phrase, speed you on your way.
I would say, oh my gosh.
It's a tough question, I know.
It is a very tough question. I would say, be sure, check yourself first. Make sure your family knows what you're doing. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you're ready. Keep your ego at home and make sure that you can do this and that you think of yourself. That was the one thing that people told me time and time again, take care of yourself. So if you want to do the rally or somebody else wanted to do the rally, the one thing I would say is make sure you're ready. Get your head in the game first.
I think that's really, really solid advice. And if anybody asks me, that's what I'll tell them. Because I'm not the kind of person that'll do that.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you and other people that I know that have done the rally.
Thanks.
Whether they finished or not, simply making the commitment is a big step.
It is.
And I want to, tell you again, congratulations
Thank you.
and let you know how proud all of us that know you are
Thank you.
that
Thank
you've
you.
achieved this kind of monumental goal of finishing the Iron Butt Rally. And still, again, no points left on the table. That's just, I've done a few shorter rallies, and you always kind of lose points at the table. You take a picture of the wrong angle of the statue or whatever, but no points left at the table. That's to me, that's still the most amazing thing out of the whole thing. So, best of luck with everything. And
Thank you very much.
I hope that we get to talk to Mike in a couple of years.
That sounds great.
Maybe we'll talk to, if he gets in, maybe we'll talk to him ahead of time and compare, things. So
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
All right. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And have a great rest of 2017.
Thank you.
So I want to take a moment to thank Tina Venters again for joining me for that interview. I've been fascinated with the people that participate in the Iron Butt Rally for a long time. In 2015, I was able to help out a few people that I knew with tire changes and oil changes and just kind of general support at one of the checkpoints in Tennessee. It's just a fascinating event. And the Iron Butt Association is a really cool group of people to talk to. I know we're running a little long on this episode. I'm trying to keep these under an hour, and we're just over that. But before I sign off, I want to encourage you to visit the MOA website and take advantage of the 3 free offer. If you can't decide what's best about the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America, you can take it for a 3-month test ride. Register for 3 free issues of the BMW Owners News and access to our online forum. At the end of the test ride, you'll have the option to join with a full membership or ride off into the sunset. There's no obligation to get started, so point your web browser to bmwmoa.org/3free. That's the number 3 and the word free. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Flickr, and if we're leaving out a social media venue that you're fond of, drop us an email at podcast@bmwmoa.org and tell us where we should be. I want to thank you for coming back for the second episode of Chasing the Horizon. I know I promised you one interview and delivered another, but I had some trouble with the audio files from Moira Zinn's interview, so I wasn't able to bring that to you this time. Rest assured I'll get that sorted out and have Moira on in a future episode. Our next episode features an interview with Tom Larson, the founder of Motorcycle Relief Project, and that will be out on September 4th. Andrew Finberg composed and recorded our theme music. Karen Halker designed our logo. Thanks again to Tina Venters for this episode's interview, and we'll see you out there on the road. Or off it. Ride safe.